Hey everybody, welcome to Southland's Parenting Podcast. That's all it's called.
So original.
Yeah, I know.
It's easy to find.
What we're trying to do is impress upon parents what must be impressed upon kids, because you can't give what you don't have.
I like the tagline.
Can't give what you don't have. So this is our second one. We haven't released the first one as we're recording this. So we're diving back into parenting today. Why don't you guys take just a quick second to introduce yourselves as fellow podcasters.
How? But
maybe this is
you're starting a franchise, aren't you?
No, I mean, it's a great opportunity. I'm like a proud papa.
Look at you.
Got the kids here with me today.
My son and my daughter. That's right.
So start with introducing yourself, talk about the podcast that you do here at Southland, and we'll go from there.
You start, buddy.
Yeah, my name's Jess. I get to be part of the Tell Me More podcast, which is our women's podcast, which is awesome. It is also
Tell me more.
brand new.
Tell me more.
Tell you more.
Okay.
Do you want to sing?
Don't give him the chance.
He did it.
Already did
He
a little
did
bit.
it.
Just one line.
Yeah, we promoted on Locker Room. And he sang.
I didn't stretch out the golden
What
pipes.
did you sing?
Just tell me more. Tell me more.
Thank you.
I think
Thank you. That's
I can
twice.
sound better as a woman singing than I can a man.
I agree. As someone who's heard you sing both ways.
It's all right.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Anyway, Tell Me More it's just conversations that women have about things that we deal with every day and we don't always talk about. So we wanted to make sure everybody knew that you can have healthy conversations surrounding things like friendship or loss or change or whatever it may be, and have that with a couple other people that I highly trust and value. So
That's good.
Yeah.
That's really good. Have you started on just men and just
Not
trying to figure out how
yet.
to fix
We
this?
thought we'd ease into that. We'll do a crossover one of these days, and it'll be
It's actually
great.
probably not that hard. It's just getting them to do it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. We all know what the issue is.
We're not all that complex.
That's right. Simple,
Women
not
are
easy.
oceans.
Yeah.
Fellows
Simple,
are
not
like
easy.
baby pools. Pretty
That's right.
simple. Yeah.
That's right. Not deep.
Scott Hatfield and I have taken the mantle from podcast creator Scott Nickel to do Locker Room, and so we've been in it, and in my second season, season 11. So it's been good.
Yeah.
11?
Yeah. It's like Hard Knocks or like Survivor. It's been like 38 episodes, but it's only like 20 years old, like because they do two.
You've done a lot of episodes.
We did a lot. We did
Yeah.
a lot of seasons
Yeah.
of different length and things like
I
that.
have
So that's
so
not how
far
many
to go.
years.
Yeah, but still, I have so far to go.
Get on it.
And here
These
we are.
women need it. That's right.
And here we are with this baby parenting podcast.
That's right.
And so the premise of it has been, look, you can't give what you don't have. And so as much as we would like to turn our attention to kids and what we can do to fix them, make sure they're good, raise them right, all the different things that we want to get kind of fixated on. The reality is we can't impress upon them something that hasn't first been impressed upon us. So the most valuable thing you can possibly do for your kids is to follow hard after Jesus.
Yeah.
Become more like him, allow them to be a part of your sanctification process, and then turn your attention to them. And oftentimes we want to get the cart before the horse as parents and worry more about what we're doing with them, to them, for them, whatever that may be. And if we do that to the detriment of disregarding our own hearts and our own spiritual development, our own marriages, all those kinds of things, it's ultimately not going to serve them very well.
Right.
So diving in today, I gave you guys a reading assignment.
How about that?
How'd that feel for you? Are you guys auditory learners? Are you visual learners?
Oh,
How do you
this is
learn
great.
best? Do you like this?
Yes,
You
I
like
take notes and all the things,
Okay.
and it makes me remember.
Yeah, she eagerly wanted to order the book,
I
and
did order
so
the book.
teachers'
I'm
credit
all
award
for
goes
it.
to her.
Yeah, I think it's good. I didn't know when you gave us you didn't give us the title of the book, so I'm like, I don't know who this is.
Well, I
Yeah.
asked. You
Oh,
have to
if it's-
ask.
Yeah, teachers' pet
Benny Hinn.
ass.
I didn't know if it was Max Lucado.
So the book is Parenting, such a clever title.
Man, these-
by Paul David Tripp. And so, it's literally, I've joked about this before. Forgot to start a timer for the episode there. I've talked about this before. I don't like parenting books that much.
Yeah.
I've come across a few that I've kind of enjoyed a little bit or thought were helpful. This is literally the only one that I thought, man, he really hits the nail on the head from the perspective of this is ultimately about our hearts as moms and dads. And if we don't deal with that first, then anything else we do is going to fall way short. And so I wanted to give you guys the introduction to this book, and I hope that people who are listening will go grab this book. Again, it's called Parenting. It's very easy to...
Paul David Tripp.
Paul David Tripp, very easy to find. And so in this opener, he talks a lot about just kind of big picture parenting and who you are as a parent And, you know, most people would immediately kind of gravitate towards, man, I'm trying to raise these kids. I'm trying to make sure that these kids become fill in the blank, successful, make sure that they have good marriages, make sure they go to college, make sure they, and what he's trying to do is back up and go, the real question is, what are we as parents? And so as you guys kind of looked at that chapter and he addressed that, what stood out to you? Or what maybe resonated with you, especially you know, because you were eager to just kind of go, man, I want to get this book. So what was it maybe that made you so eager to get the book?
I'll tell on myself, because the whole first 3 paragraphs, I guess, 4 paragraphs, is about this crazy chaotic house that's nutso, and you're going crazy, and you've just yelled at your kids, and you're like, why did I do that? I know that wasn't even right, and yet here I am still doing it and wandering back, trying to just sit down and read for a second. And I was like, oh, it's me. So that was the very first thing. I was like, I need to read this book, obviously, because he just nailed me in this very beginning.
Well, and I think it's worth saying, like, and this is true in a lot of his writing, he does such a good job of painting a real picture of what it looks like to just be a person. You know, to be a mom, a dad, a father, a husband, whatever that may be. He doesn't candy coat things. He's done a lot of pastoral work, and so he's not just reflecting on his own life, but he's reflecting on just the stories he's heard and things like that. But he does a great job of not making you feel like, oh, I'm listening to an expert,
right?
Which is really key, I think.
Yes.
You know, most parenting people who write about, you know, parenting come off as experts.
Yeah, absolutely.
So sorry, I interrupted you.
No, you're fine. Well, there was that. But then also, I think that just the perspective of keeping in mind that they aren't mine. They're really not. I mean, yes, they've been given to me to steward, but they're not mine. They're his. And if I can remember that, then that puts everything else in its proper order, which is really probably a reminder that we need every day. But
and that's kind of the premise he begins with, is that most parents take the perspective of what he calls ownership parenting. Like, these are my kids, and so it's on me to make sure that they, again, fill in the blank. And what he does is backs us up and says, no, actually, you've been given them for a season to steward them as a good gift from God for a purpose, and that's a very different thing. So, what stood out to you?
I think, you know, as I'm reading this first part, I just immediately went Proverbs 29:18. It just says, "Without vision, people perish." And I think we all come into this with so many different ideas or desires or where we came from, and so we're going to parent based on, I need it to be different than what I had grown up, or I need it to be better than what I had. And it's like, well, we have to define better because we have to go back to what is God's intentions for parenting. And I think that's huge. Just like marriage, we can go, how's your marriage? Well, we can look around at all these people around us whose marriages are on fire, and you go, man, it's great. And it's like, is it? Just because it's better than your parents growing up or your friends doesn't mean that it's great, because we may have missed the why behind why we do what we do. And so, I mean, the ownership piece is obviously, you know, we care deeply about our kids, but I just married one off in January. They don't belong to us as much as we want, and trying to control their lives and all those type of things. I mean, it's just, there's so much, when we fixate on stuff, or when we obsess about things, and we try to force them into our image versus the image of God, we're going to just always have trouble, be super frustrated, and be angry.
I think in an age where, especially on the back end of COVID, a lot of parents have felt almost betrayed in some ways, because they've learned things about what's been taught to their kids in schools, what's been said to their kids in schools, or what's been done to their kids by not getting to go to school, all kinds of different things. So there's a little bit of parents are kind of rising up right now, going to school boards, you know, all that kind of thing, going, these are my kids. They don't belong to the government. They don't belong to you. They belong to me. And there is a healthy side to that of going, no, you're the only one who's been entrusted by the living God to parent these kids. The principal that wasn't entrusted by God, the president wasn't entrusted by God, the school board, whoever that may be. But on the flip side, like what he's talking about, is they're not yours. They're ultimately God's. And they've been given to you for a purpose. So for me as a parent, what I have to fall back on a lot is going, man, God's intentions towards my kids are even better than mine. You know, He wants good for them more than I do.
Yeah.
So
Loves
when I
them more than
pray,
you.
yeah.
Yeah.
When I pray for them, a lot of times I'm praying for things and then ultimately having to say, but your will be done, not mine, because I think what I'm asking for is good for my kids and best for my kids, but God ultimately knows what's good and best for my kids. And that's really hard. It's hard to entrust that, because what I know about God is that he's more than willing to allow me and you to go through really hard and painful things that will ultimately make us more like his son.
Right.
But that's just really, really hard to watch your kids go through, that refining process.
Yeah.
So he says this, I'll be interested here on page 14. He said, ownership parenting is motivated and shaped by what parents want for their children and from their children. So I'll say it again. Ownership parenting is motivated and shaped by what parents want for their children and from their children. It is driven by a vision of what we want our children to be and what we want our children to give us in return. And so then he skips down, or I'll skip down a little bit, and he says, good parenting, which does what God intends it to do, begins with this radical and humbling recognition that our children don't actually belong to us. Rather, every child in every home, everywhere on the globe, belongs to the one who created him or her. Children are God's possession for his purpose. That means his plan for parents is that we would be agents in the lives of these ones that have been formed into his image and entrusted to our care. So then he goes on and kind of defines our role as being that of an ambassador. Yeah. So did that stand out to you guys at all, the role of the ambassador? And
it's not a word that we use very often at all, but I like the definition that he had here. I'm trying to see if I can find it. Do you know where it is?
Yeah, so he says the only thing an ambassador does if he's interested in keeping his job is to faithfully represent the message, methods, and character of the leader who has sent him.
Yeah.
It's like, that's money. You know? So if I'm clear on who my leader is who sent me, I'm trying to reflect his character, methods, and message, back to my kids.
But you have to be clear on who he is.
Right.
Which is our part.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So you got to know him really, really well, which is what we talked a lot about in the first podcast. Yep. It also can be really defeating because in those moments, like when you're going, man, I just blew up at my kids. I just yelled at my kids. I'm mad at my kids. And I wish that wouldn't have happened. You go, man, I know that I'm handing them a picture of the Father, and this isn't a good one right now. So that can be an overwhelming mantle of responsibility. So in those moments where you've blown it, what do you do?
Oh, there's been lots of apologizing on our part, especially just. Of course, my kids are younger, so there's a little bit different way that we have to talk to them because I think they see those reactions and they're just like, ugh. But then they start to model those reactions, and I'm like, okay, I got to backtrack here and say I'm sorry, but also this is not what I should have done. Mom makes mistakes too, which my 9-year-old is very sweet. She was like, you did? Can you tell me about a time when you did something that you shouldn't have? And I'm like, well.
Pull up a seat.
How much time do you have?
How much time do you have? Yeah,
Comes
exactly.
your bedtime?
So, but there's been lots of apologizing in situations where both Chuck and I have just had to sit him down and go, we shouldn't have said that.
Yeah.
What we are angry at is still there.
An issue. Yeah.
We need to talk about that. But our reaction shouldn't have been what it was. So... yeah, we've had to do that for sure, which is very humbling. But
yeah, it is. Yeah, I mean, there's so many times as a parent, I'm 20 years into this. How old's Avery now?
21.
21 years into this, and so
I'm a child.
you got a long road ahead of you of just going, I blew it, and there are those moments, and I try to always remember, like, the voice of accusation is never coming from the Father. So in those moments where it's like, you're a failure as a father, you're the worst. That's never Jesus.
Right.
That's the enemy getting in my head going, okay, you may have just made a mistake or may have messed up. That's not who you are.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And I think he does a good job in here of articulating that it's really, parenting is over the long haul, and it's those behind the scenes moments, those little things along the way. And as parents, we get really tempted sometimes to go, okay, I got to have the talk. Well, if your plan is to only have one talk or the talk about fill in the blank, doesn't just have to be sex, could be anything.
Right.
That's the wrong kind of plan. Sure. This is that whole walking along the road thing we talked about in the previous podcast. This has to be a steady, consistent, normal, everyday part of life. Ups, downs, and in betweens. There's teachable moments all along the way. And over the course of the long haul, kids get a good picture of the Father from us.
Yeah.
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 On page 15, I thought this was, he kind of starts at the bottom of page 14. He says, here's what this means at a street level. Parenting is not first about what we want for our children or from our children, but about what God in His grace has planned to do through us in our children. To lose sight of this is to end up with a relationship with our children that at the foundational level is neither Christian nor true parenting, because it has become more about our will and our way than about the will and the way of the sovereign Savior King. And then he goes on, and I thought this was just a good window into his humility. He says, I want to say right here and right now, I'm very bad at what I'm now writing about. I like sovereignty. I like ownership. I like having my will done on earth as God's will is done in heaven. I often treated my 4 children who are now grown as if they were my possessions. And he kind of goes on. So I just thought that was a really good position for him to come from, to be able to explain, to people, like, this is the ongoing temptation that we're always going to face as parents, is to want for and from our children instead of what is it that needs to happen in our children.
Yeah.
So I'd be interested to hear from you guys. What have been the ways over the years with your kids that you've been able to identify, man, what needs to happen in that child right there? What is the thing that we need to focus on right now? For me, it's been a journey of really kind of trying to live out these things tattooed on my wrist, grace and truth, of going, man, does this child right now need more grace? Or does this child need a dose of truth right now? And that's not always been easy to navigate. And sometimes, over the years, I think we've become a little bit more adept at realizing that one just needs a little more grace right now. But what have you guys been able to key on in your parenting?
Well, I was going to say something about personality, so I guess it's kind of similar to what you're saying. But my kids are very different. And so the things that they respond to are very different. And Chuck and I are very different. So what we respond to is very different. And I think it's important because it shows their individualism and how God created them to be unique. And it's important that we recognize those things so that we can talk to them the way that they need to be talked to and the way that they're going to respond best to. All of which is a reflection of God, but being able to see those things in them and as they change.
Yeah.
Because that's not stayed the same. I mean, my oldest now is somewhat introverted, and when she was younger, I would have sworn she was going to be extroverted and didn't care what anybody thought, and she very much cares how people think about her and look at her. And so trying to get her now to understand that it doesn't matter what anybody else thinks, it matters what the Lord thinks about her. That's kind of where we're living with her right now. But it changes every season we're in. So I just have to have my eyes open to where's she at right now and what she's struggling with, because that's definitely not what God says about her. So,
And what you just said requires careful observation and a lot of attention. And like, I've noticed that over the years with all 4 of my kids, is like, you'll pick up on some little tendencies and tells along the way. Go, man, they're kind of short-tempered right now. Usually that's indicative of...
It's all symptom.
Yeah, not always will they be able to even tell you.
Absolutely.
Which is super interesting. And
I can't always tell.
I can't.
That's what I was about to say.
I don't know.
I'm mad. I don't
just
even
mad.
know why.
That's right. I'm sad.
Oh, is that
I
what it
don't
is?
know.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so sometimes we can help our kids navigate that and pinpoint what's really going on. Did something happen at school today? Is there something going on with friends? Is there something going on online? Is there, there's all kinds of different questions you can ask. But to even get there requires that careful observation of and knowing your kids' personalities and how they're changing and all that kind of thing is just really important, because it's easy to get caught in autopilot.
Oh, yeah.
And one day just go, whoa, what happened to them? Well, it happened over the course of the last 3 years.
Totally.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
What about you?
I think here's something more recent. Before we started school this year, my 6th grader Everly is going to middle school. She's starting a new school, and so we just took a drive, and I just said, "Hey, I want you to tell me about your story. Tell me your story," because she's adopted. And so I wanted to see, one, what she remembers from all the things that we talked about, and all of what that's gone through, and what she's walked through, and just to make sure that she really understands the power of her story. And even with all 3 of our kids, I think all children are miracles. I just know for us, they were answers to prayer, and we battled all kinds of stuff.
Right.
And so just to hear Everly articulate, well, God called you guys to Seattle to start this church, and because I've said, that's what we thought,
Right.
And it was so much more than that. And so I'm able to. So she's able to because she's heard me say this. Go, yeah, but he had a bigger purpose for you all there, and it was me, And to hear her talk about her story, and at the end of all of that, and I just keep affirming as she's talking to me, she's sitting in the front seat. She's now kind of in a place where she gets to sit in the front seat. When her sister's not in the car, she didn't get to.
That hierarchy
Don't be
is
big
so
time.
clear.
Yeah, don't be big time.
That's right.
So, but I'm like, how do you feel about your story? She said, I have an awesome story. I'm like, yeah, you do. And I think driving them back to who they are and that God created them, knit them together, and think his thoughts about them are so vast it outnumbers the grains of sand. Identity is so crucial, and I think when kids grow up with parents that are grounded and they know who they are in Christ, that's a difference maker. Because yes, I will always lean toward getting my cues from how they're doing. Not that I want to live vicariously through them. But it just doesn't depend on their actions, their reaction. It doesn't depend. If we can help them know who they are in Christ, if we can help them understand that they were made with great detail, everything about them, I think it changes because they're going to walk through seasons where they're confident one minute, maybe even popular, and then maybe not, or dealing with some issues with friends or whatever, or a loss in a relationship or whatever, and then it can move them sideways. It's like, yeah, but listen, it's like a buoy, okay? So these things are buoyant, and they may go under a little bit, they may get knocked around, but you're not going under. You're resilient because you know who you are, because you know who God is and how much He loves you, and so because of that, He didn't make a mistake. He didn't make any mistakes, and so starting with some of those things I think are critical, because my youngest is, honestly, she's one of the most confident people I know.
Yeah.
We'll just be watching something, Bear Grylls, she's like, I could do that.
You love it.
Like there's almost nothing that I think that she thinks that she can't do.
Right.
I'm like, hey, you don't get all the gifts.
Nothing's out of reach for her. Yeah.
Yeah, but it was like if the world had that type of confidence, not arrogance, but just confidence.
Right.
I wonder what would it look like, And so trying to help that, also trying to keep humility is super critical. Too.
Well, you bring up something that I think is really, both of you kind of reference, like, personality differences between kids. And as I'm approaching, one that's in college, sophomore, one that's about to be done with high school, one that's just started high school, it's real interesting how their personalities, there's these little signs along the way where you go, man, yeah, I saw that in that one when he was like in utero on the ultrasound, that kind of thing. And so it does become this thing of like, how do I aim? Yeah. So how do I aim her with all that confidence?
Yeah.
In the right direction, so that it doesn't turn into arrogance.
Right.
As far as it depends on me, what do I want to cultivate in her? I want to cultivate that security that she seems to already just kind of innately have. Yeah. Then what can we aim her at? Knowing what's true about her, and our kids are not for everybody. Sometimes our kids, they will grate on certain people, certain teachers, certain other kids, certain other families. They just won't like them, or they won't get along, or they won't. Right. Then I've had to get pretty comfortable with that at times of going, well, that's okay. You're not for everybody. I'm not for everybody. Hatfield's not for everybody.
Definitely. I'm an acquired taste.
So let me dive into these traps that he kind of talks about that start off on page 17. There's like four things that he mentions that parents easily can fall into. And the first one he talks about is identity. Yeah. And he says, where you look to find your sense of who you are, that's identity. Owner parents, so what he does is he kind of goes back and forth and just kind of articulates the distinction between people who fall into this trap of being kind of owner parents.
Controlling, really. Yeah. Controlling, manipulating.
Yeah. Right.
Helicopter parents.
Right, yeah. He says owner parents tend to look to get their identity, meaning, purpose, and inner sense of well-being from their children. Their children tend to be saddled with the unbearable burden of their parents' sense of self-worth.
And then read the next sentence.
Yeah.
This is so cool.
I have to say this. Parenting is a miserable place to look for your identity, if for no other reason than the fact that every parent parents sinners. Yep. Like, amen.
Okay. I will look at my kids and tell them how much I love them. Yeah. And I didn't grow up in a house where that happened. like they could drown in the amount of affection and words of affirmation and encouragement we've given them. And it's like, you know, hey, you look beautiful today. I love your dress. It's super. And they're like, thanks, Dad. I'm
They're
like,
just used to it. Yeah.
yeah. Like, I mean, if I had 5 minutes of that, you know, what would it look like in my life? You know, it's like, come on, man.
Yeah.
You know, they don't know any different.
I'm casting pearls before swine.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's
it's
right.
it's a trap that I think most of us, maybe not everybody, but most of us can identify as being so easy to fall into, and yet we still fall into it. And I think one of the things that's so key there is he makes clear this is an unbearable burden on our kids to go, man, my mom and dad's self-worth is determined by what I do or don't do.
Right.
Yeah.
That's too much.
Yeah.
That's too much for anybody to handle.
Yeah.
And that's what idolatry ultimately does, is you try to get from someone or something what you can only get from God, which is too much pressure for whoever, whatever that is. And so, you know, you've heard me say before, you know, kids make terrible gods. You know, they do make terrible gods because they're sinners.
Yeah.
You know?
They're not thinking about you, man.
Yeah, man. And they're not going to deliver, and they're going to have bad days. And
They'll come back at some point with a lot of gratitude, but they're not thinking about you. It's like you showered me with this, or that was a great teaching lesson, Dad.
Yeah.
You know, thanks so much for exposing me to this opportunity,
No.
Mom. I mean,
No.
they don't know.
Well,
They
and
don't know.
if they are, it's probably paralyzing and overwhelming to them. You know, so if the easiest references for me are in sports. You know, I mean, it's like if that kid gets in the batter's box thinking, man, if I don't get a hit this time, my dad is going to melt down. That's too much.
He's not paying attention to the pitcher. He's not paying attention to the coach is telling him what to do in this next swing. He's thinking about his dad.
Yep. And I've coached kids where all they do is look. You know, every little thing they do, they look to their. And I had a friend tell me this about Eli one time. He's like, man, he's looking to you too much. Like on the sidelines, he's watching you.
Yeah.
Every time he does something, and it was like, man, that was a smack upside the head. Like, all right, Dad, you
Just
need
play.
to settle down.
Just play.
You know, be quiet and settle down.
Yeah.
But the identity parenting piece. If you're trying to get your self-worth from your kids, you're going to be miserable. They're going to be miserable. It'll crush them, and it'll ultimately destroy your relationship. That's so much of what we deal with, you know, pastorally is looking back, you know, with people going, oh, your mom, you know, there's all kinds of examples we could give. You know, there's a reason for the stereotypes. You said one, helicopter parent, stage mom, you know, that dad on the backstop screaming.
Kids always looking perfect. It's like these big bows that we see in Lexington. It's like, man, my kids go to school and they just, I'm like, put what you want on, you know.
I'm lucky if Ella brushes her hair.
Yeah, man. So here's a funny story. The other day, Allie, you know, first day of school for two of my kids happened after Labor Day, as we're recording this, which is a couple days ago. So this is, you know, for Bo, the 10-year-old, this rocks his world. You know, it's like this terrible. You know, it's the worst possible thing that could happen. It happens every year. I have to go back to school.
Worst.
And so, you know, about 8 o'clock, you know, I said, hey, Allie, what time we making him go to bed for school this year? She said 8:30. I said, all right. So I've learned as a parent
At the night of too. Good job.
Right. Well, I've learned as a parent too. You better give a heads up. It's like, hey, it's time to leave. I learned that early on. Like, hey, Eli, it's time to go now.
Yeah.
And it's like,
What
do you mean? I'm having the time of my life. You know, so I learned with him, like,
give him
okay,
time.
90 minutes from
Work it
now,
out.
we're
That's
going
it.
to leave.
Work it out.
Okay, 45 minutes from now.
We're going to land
20,
this plane. That's right.
you know?
That's right.
But anyway, she said, 8:30. So she made him go take a shower and all this kind of stuff. And she was walking by as he was getting out of the shower. He was done, and he picked up his dirty underwear off the floor and put it back on.
No.
And she said, hey, what are you doing? Like, the point of shower, and you know, if you just go put. And he went, I've been wearing these for days.
I love it.
Welcome to
These are
summertime,
comfortable, man.
Yeah, welcome to summertime.
My favorite pair.
in the nickel home. You
That's
know,
funny. That's funny.
go back to school. You got to put on a fresh pair of underwear.
Let's start it off right.
My favorite like version of this like illustration. Years ago, I did a series called Parent Fail. I actually took some principles from this book to develop that series. And there was a kind of a viral, I don't even know if it was considered a meme at the time. You guys might remember this. It was like a family on the beach. And it was like they're going to take their family pictures like we've all seen down on 30A, Linen and Sunset. And they've got a little kid and a baby. And the lady has dropped the baby. The baby's like flying head over heels. And she's like, the picture was taken like mid, like she's got this look on her face. And, the kid is literally upside down, headed to the sand. And that was our series logo was for Parent Fail. There's actually a story behind the whole thing. Like the baby was fine, the baby landed on her back in the middle of the sand, and all that kind of thing. But it was like that's such a perfect picture. Yeah. You're trying your best to have this family moment, and you drop the baby. But Allie and I were walking on the beach one time years and years ago. We were by ourselves. Our kids were back in Colorado. We got a few days at the beach. And we went out to walk on the beach at sunset, and all the families came out. It's golden hour. They're all taking the pictures in their linen, and everybody's miserable because that's the only way you can possibly be during this situation where you're trying to capture the light at just the right time, have everybody look like they haven't been just baked in the sun all day. They're out in the sand and the heat, all that kind of thing. And so everybody's just miserable, and we're strolling by just like euphoric, like this is great. I'm just loving life. So we're walking by, and I can't control it. I'm kind of laughing because these kids are melting down,
Pay attention.
So I'm kind of chuckling. And this guy looks at me and goes, "Hey, man, your turn will come." I went, "Hey, man, I got 4 kids. Man. I left them all back at home." I said, "I know. I'm smart enough not to do what you're doing.
Not this year. It's coming."
He just started laughing. But that really is kind of the picture. You're trying to create this portrayal of this perfect family, and underneath of it, just beneath the surface, is chaos. And that's more reality than the perfect picture at the beach. If we would show that to people and be honest about it, it'd be more helpful.
That's what I was going to say. There's so much pressure because what you see is perfection and the ideal. And I mean, that's everywhere, and social media has made that a billion times worse, but that's all you see. And honestly, a lot of the conversations that we've had on the Women's Podcast have been surrounding those things that we don't talk about because we want to present the perfection side. But if we just talked about the reality of it, everybody's going to go, "Oh, yeah, me too, me too." We literally all deal with it. So,
that's right. That's right.
I don't believe it. You know what I mean? I mean, I can watch people. I don't care if we're at Disney. I don't care if I see people at church. It's like, you can project that image
for an hour,
but I know it's not true. And I know how hard we work, and I know how when we started this with all the chaos at our home. I mean, our dinners are unbelievable. I mean, it's all over the place. People are doing this, making different sounds. Somebody's telling me about somebody farting on them at the locker. I mean, it's just it's and you go, These are our faithful leaders. Like, this is just what it is.
Yeah, I think it's important for everybody to understand, like, dinner time at the Nickel home doesn't begin with everybody gathering around.
Crisscross applesauce, everybody.
The word of the Lord. It looks exactly like what you just described. When we get the opportunity to all gather, and to be honest with you, as a kid who came, from I'm an only child, like I never had that. I love every bit. I love the chaos. I love the clanking of the dishes. I love the laugh. Back and forth and the burping and the and my wife, getting upset, Bo's climbing on things. It all makes me smile. It all makes me happy because in the middle of that chaos, again, over the long haul, it's like, man, this is what matters. It doesn't have to be picture perfect, and there doesn't have to be a devotional moment and a heavy conversation. Sometimes that happens. There's some really significant conversations that happen. But our goal is just to do that enough times that over the course of time, it's normal. It's a normal thing. And
that's what they'll remember, honestly.
I hope so.
Way on down the road, that's what they'll remember, and they'll want to recreate it themselves. So.
Jesus' own family was not perfect.
Real messy.
I mean, real messy. Even when he started kind of doing his deal with ministry, they're like, "Hey, I think something's going on with him. We probably need to go get him." He's like, "No, what are you talking about?" I mean, his family, and even just looking at the genealogy, which no one would want to necessarily just jump in and do their devotions tomorrow in it, but you just see one broken family after another broken family after another broken family, and God just working through broken families to redeem them.
This may release after our Christmas series, actually, but we developed a series that we're getting ready to do as of this recording. I think it's called like Born in a Barn. And so it's on, the messiness of Christmas. It's really, really messy. So our homes. He goes on to this next one, and he talks about this trap of work. He says, what you define as the work you have been called to do And he says owner parents think that their job is to turn their children into something. They have a vision of what they want their children to be, and they think that their work as parents is to use their authority, time, money, and energy to form their children into what they have conceived that they should be. And, that's like the stereotypical, you're going to become an attorney because, by golly, I say so, or you're going to be a doctor, or you're going to be a this,
architect,
or
whatever.
You're going to take on the firm, or you're going to, take over the family business.
Sure.
Exactly. So how do you deal, with, man, this is what I want them to be, versus I don't know what God has for them. I just, regardless of where they go or what they do, I want them to know and love Jesus. And so what is that? How do those two things look different on a practical level? I guess would be a question, I'd throw out to you guys, because it's easy to go, okay, well, if you want to be if I want you to be a baseball player, well, then this is by golly what we're going to do. We're going to be at the batting cage every day.
That's right.
But if my hope and desire is whatever you do is, kind of your thing, but I want you to know and love Jesus. How does that show up on a daily basis?
Right.
I mean, it's our responsibility to model that, I think, first and foremost. Like, they have to see in us who Jesus is, too, because they're around us every day. And I think the example is going to get instilled more than any words or anything else that we could say to them is going to. And I also think it's okay to have aspirations for your children. I don't know about maybe so job specific, but yes, we want them to be successful. Of course we do. We want them to have friends. We want them to feel loved, and we want them to know the Lord. And I think those things are okay as long as they're kept in that healthy range. It's like anything else. It can go, you do it in moderation, you can go really unhealthy with it. But as long as you keep it in I love you, this is well-intentioned, and I'm making sure that you can see Christ through what I'm doing, through what my husband's doing, and we're putting we're making sure you're at church and you're meeting people who love the Lord too, and you've got that community around you. They may well go, you know what? I mean, our whole family's creative, but my oldest may go, I'm going to go play soccer, and I'll be like, okay, I know nothing about it, let's do it. I don't care, as long as she's where God wants her to be, but I just need her to know that that's how we feel.
Yeah.
And I think that's the most important.
We've taken kind of an approach of there's a few baseline requirements. Like we're going to be at church. You're not going to negotiate on that. Right. We're not legalistic about it. We'll miss every now and then if we're traveling or something like that. But that's going to be the normal rhythm of our life. Right. We're going to go to church. So sorry, you're the kid, we're the parent. That's why we can't have nice things. You're the worship person and tech person around here.
Not used to
You've not been around these microphone things before.
Sorry.
There's some other stuff we've done over the years where it's like, hey, we want you to move physically. So it's not that we want you to be in every sport. We just want you to do something throughout the year, and you can try all kinds of different things. Yeah. Then there's a certain age that we've kind of been able to go, okay, what do you love and gravitate towards, and how can we nurture and cultivate that and create opportunities for you? So my son Silas, who's a freshman this year, he's not competitive at all. Yeah. At all. Yeah. It's the weirdest thing to me. I just look at him and go, I don't know how that happened, And I always say, it's like God divided me in two different ways with Eli and Silas. Like, he took all my intensity and competitiveness and multiplied it times 1,000, put it in Eli.
Sure.
Took all my love for books and drama and things like that and put all that in Silas. And so he loves writing plays and being in plays and things like that. Well, he's 14 now. He's kind of figured that out. And so it's like, okay, we want to help you in that endeavor. Right. We didn't identify that for him. Right. We helped him find that. Now he's off and running on it. Landry with her art stuff. I don't know where that came from, because neither of us can do art like she can. Yeah. But we wanted to help, give her opportunities with that, versus demanding.
Exactly.
You're going to be this, doggone it, no matter what,
Yeah. I was always athletic growing up. My wife is not athletic at all. And so, and having three girls, it's like, we've done different things where we've said, hey, we're going to play basketball. We're going to play these I am second places or whatever, or I am third, whatever they are. But fourth, fifth, sixth, whatever. Jesus is first. That's what we know.
Last.
That's
all
right.
that
Everybody gets a
matters.
ribbon.
That's right. Joy.
Yeah.
Jesus, others, and then you.
Yeah.
So
Throwback.
we've done that, and I love the opportunity for them to be around the team sports stuff for fun, and so we're trying to wrestle through some of that.
Yep.
But at the end of the day, I don't know what my kids are going to be great
Right.
at. I have no idea, and so giving them an opportunity to see different things is super helpful. But at the end of the day, I don't know where they're going to go to college. I mean, I had one go through college. If you think that you might know what they're going to do, it's like just be careful about doing that. But
Old blue sleep.
but like it's almost like if you lock them into something because hey, you played baseball and you're this incredible athlete and they're going to play baseball. It's like in some ways it's like these prearranged marriages.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You hook your son up with this woman, and how do you know that you love her?
Yeah.
I mean, how do you know? Because there's been so much pressure. You don't have a choice in this matter, and so. And what happens is what will happen. There's so much pressure, and hey, we put all this investment that all these student athletes get up in high school or even college, and they go, I don't even like this sport anymore.
Yeah.
But I've been doing it for so long.
I have to keep going.
Yeah, and it's like they put all this investment. It's like there's so much. It's like, I mean, and then the percentages of those who go to high school to college to play sports, and then those go from college to I mean, it's so small. It's microscopic.
I was at a baseball game this summer, and keep it in mind, these are kids who are about to be seniors in high school. You know, so they're playing summer ball. They're 17 years old, and most of them played summer ball their whole lives. That kind of thing. And one kid walked out of the batter's box after striking out, and he said, this is why I hate baseball.
Yeah.
And I thought, man, that's a long time to be doing something you hate. And you could be doing a lot of other stuff right now.
Yeah.
Why are you even here? Who's making you, or what pressure do you feel that you go, this is why I'm here right now. You're in the middle of Louisville on a Sunday morning, it's 98 degrees outside, and you're doing something you hate. It's an interesting thing.
High school.
Yeah, and I could project a lot of things onto that family and those parents, or I didn't know them from anybody, but that happens time and time and time again.
It's like, and even defining what success is. It's like our kids have gotten, these last two, they get all A's all the time. We've never said A's and B's, A's and B's. We got this. Listen, we got get this resume up. It's like. We don't give them money for A's or B's.
Yeah.
I had that kind of growing up. Quarter for this, and it's like whatever. I mean, are we doing our best? And as we do our best, are we thinking ahead? Are we trying to put a plan? Trying to teach her how to. I've got one that can't remember anything. I'm like, hey, did you bring your planner home? No. Okay, well that's cool. Did you bring your homework home? No. Yeah. Well, you're going to need that. Hey, why don't we not work on this book project that's due before school? Like, why don't we not wait until the night before we start school? Can we just listen, man? It makes your life so much easier. And teaching her how to do things like that, being responsible, planning ahead, doing what you need to do, so that eventually you can do what you want to do. Trying to create character type stuff in our kids, because I have no idea what either of these girls are going to do. Yeah. But if I can get them to love Jesus, and I can show them what it looks like to follow Him and help them understand how much He loves them, that He has a plan for them regardless of what they do, and even just being able to talk about people in our church, because in some ways our kids have a weird perspective, vantage point of church, because they go, well, yeah, we love Jesus. I mean, our one of our parents works at the church. It's like, yeah, but man, look at this guy over here. It's a lawyer, and he loves Jesus. Look at this guy over here. He works at Toyota. He's doing this, and look at. I want to tell you the story about how generous this guy right here is a counselor, or being able to tell these stories that how whatever you do, wherever you go, that there's mission and opportunity all around you, including where they're going to get up and go to every day. That there's an opportunity to serve and love people the way that He's loved them. That's super important.
Yeah, I have long-term prayers for my kids, and then I have like the present, like short-term stuff. Yeah. So there's stuff I pray for in the short term, like safety.
Sure.
I pray for all my kids the second they pull out of the driveway. That kind of thing. I pray before football games, during football games, after football games. All that kind of thing.
Sometimes.
Yeah, every play sometimes. But long-term, my prayers really revolve around two things. It's I want them to love Jesus. I want them to follow and be faithful. And I pray for their future spouses, and their marriages. And it's really those two big things. Other than that,
what they do, how much money they make.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah. Where they go. I mean, I have preferences, but
Sure.
it's still, again, it goes back to they're not mine.
I'd love to have them close, but you know what?
Yeah.
I don't get to control that.
Yeah,
I
they're not
don't.
mine. Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
He goes on, I want to hit these last two. He talks about success. He says, what you define success to be. And really the most important thing I thought he said in this was right in the middle. He said, good parents don't always produce good kids. And parents should constantly be asking themselves where they get a set of values that tell them whether they have good kids or not. And he put good in quotes. I'm afraid that many good parents live with long-term feelings of failure because their children have not turned out the way they hoped. That's hard. It's real hard, because that's the fear piece of being a parent is going, my ultimate, fear around, safety, physically and all that. Then there's the ultimate fear, man, what if they just make terrible mistakes? What if they just go off the rails? What if they become a prodigal? What if they run and then really what a lot of times is behind that, and then what does that say about me? And that's the tricky thing.
Yeah.
But I always come back to, Luke 15, this story of the prodigal son. The father is an illustration of the father. Yeah. And if he can have a prodigal, a lot of them, then I think that's probably possible for us. And this is so hard.
You can have a great parent. You can be a great parent and have wayward, rebellious, angry kids. You can.
That's right.
And if you live under the suspicion of, hey, I don't have, we don't get to dictate the results.
Can't control it.
While they're in the house, maybe to some level. But at the end of the day, all our job is to model Jesus, to impress Jesus upon them, to help them know what it looks like, to put the right roots underneath them, and then they get to choose whether they want to do that. And that's heartbreaking when it doesn't happen, but it doesn't mean that you were a bad parent because it did.
That's right.
Yes. We have my Chuck's family, there's kind of a situation there where that literally happened. He grew up in a family who loved the Lord.
Yeah.
I mean, great values. They raised them, going to church on Sundays, reading the Bible, praying, having dinner together, that whole thing. Very similar to my upbringing. Yeah. And right now, there's one of the family members who's just like, I don't believe any of that. I'm not talking to y'all. Like, it's very separated. And my mother-in-law, bless her, has taken it really well, but she has literally said that, well, what did I do wrong?
Right.
And I'm like, you didn't do anything wrong. There's nothing you can do. It's outside your control, which those things are hard for us to accept,
Really
just
hard.
in general.
Because we go,
but,
I could, if I'd have just done more of this,
Right.
it's like,
yeah.
I mean, nobody's done this perfectly.
Right.
There's not a
sure.
perfect conversation, but
Yeah, but that one time
Yeah.
that you got angry is
That's
not
why.
the reason.
That's why.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
if that's their
Like,
tipping point,
yeah,
they've missed it anyway.
Yeah, that's just. I hope that's encouraging to people because
I think it's really vital. I think it's really important. That goes back to, a passage that we'll land on here in a little bit. But once you release them,
Yeah.
like you said, there's certain things you can kind of control and things like that while they're in your home and things like that. But there is a moment in time where it's like, take a deep breath and go, hey, just like you.
Yeah.
We were subject to our own sinful desires. We made terrible decisions. We've done things we messed up. That didn't have anything to do with our parents, and we certainly can't blame them for it.
No.
There's other things that we can look back at and go, yeah, that was,
Didn't help.
Every parent
Sure.
is going to wound their kids.
Yeah.
We do, all of us.
All of us.
But ultimate responsibility is going to be on them to make their choices as well. And so that's hard, but it should be freeing for parents.
Yes.
And our kids are going to fail.
Yeah.
They're going to make crazy mistakes. I mean, they just, because we did.
That's right.
And we do.
That's right.
And I think.
Still do.
Yeah, I think that's, if we're trying to make them religious, I mean, it'll work for a while. And if they're a rule keeper by nature, they may stay in that vein. But then they're just legalistic.
Yeah.
Because they grew up that way.
Well,
It's
it'll
like,
lead to one of two places. Either they'll become really arrogant, legalistic, or they'll become absolutely defeated and depressed.
Yeah.
You can only go those two directions when it comes to religion.
we can't. It's not about getting them to act right. It's about helping them understand what God thinks about them, and if that can make its way into their heart and what Jesus did for them, and what He calls them to, it's the game changer. It's the only thing that changes everything.
Well, it's, Bonhoeffer, I think, talked about behavior modification or sin management. And it's so much easier to try to attack sin, to manage sin, behavior, modify people's behavior, including your own, as opposed to doing the deep work of heart change. That's totally different. Yeah. And a lot of times we do that because of this last thing he talks about, which is reputation. He says owner parents unwittingly turn their children into their trophies. They tend to want to be able to parade their children in public to the applause of the people around them. And this is why so many parents struggle with the crazy, zany phases that their children go through as they are growing up. They're not so much concerned about what that craziness says about their children, but what it says about them.
I'd be such a mess if like whatever my kids did was a reflection of me and who I am.
Well, I think of those moments, and I'm sure you've had them. I remember Allie early on, like, you're in the grocery store and you got a kid who just goes nuts, just loses their ever-loving mind, and you feel like everybody's looking at you and judging you.
They just fall on the ground like a protester.
Look at I just go limp noodle.
Yeah.
Look at that poor woman. She's a terrible mom.
That's right.
When in reality, most people, are going, I've been there.
Yeah, exactly.
I know how that feels.
Exactly.
It's like being on an airplane with a kid.
Yeah.
When a kid starts crying, I'm like the most compassionate person on that plane because I've been there, man. I know, like that. You know who wants that baby to be quiet the most?
Sorry.
That mom, that dad, that whoever's with that baby.
That's right.
So don't get mad at those folks. But you feel like all the eyeballs turn to you in those moments where your kids act up, don't act right, do things that draw attention to their bad behavior because it's a temptation to see it as ultimately a reflection of who you are, And over the years, I think I've grown way more comfortable.
Yes, absolutely.
With just going, he's a sinner.
Yeah.
He messes up.
Yeah.
She messes up. She does things. What do you want me to do? Hit him?
Right.
What do you want me to do? Go grab him by the collar, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And but it is hard. It is hard.
Oh, yeah. It's hard. I did have a guy on a plane one time say, "Are you traveling back on this flight in a week?"
Are you serious?
He was not happy. Of course, I spent the whole time trying. My daughter was 2.
Sure.
What are you going to do with a 2-year-old?
Yeah. The ears
She's
are messing
2.
up.
Yeah.
Sure.
Right. She was upset. And I mean, I had run out of snacks because, you take a billion snacks on a plane.
We've had people pass snacks and buy snacks for our kids as if like, oh, thank you. We hadn't thought of that.
Right. Exactly.
Good thing you're here.
Yeah. Hey, man, once you grab that cushion you're sitting on and open up that door and just jump on out.
Oh, my word.
I had a theory for a while that if I ever got arrested, it would be in one of 2 places.
Yeah.
It's more expansive than that now, but back then the theory was airports.
Yep.
Yeah.
And the other was playgrounds, and it was because of that. One time, Allie was traveling with a couple of the kids by herself, flying from probably here to Denver, or vice versa, and she had Eli on her lap or something like that, and landing, ears are exploding, kids are crying, and guy in front of her turned around and said, "Can't you try to like rock him or something?"
Yeah.
And she told me this like hours later. I mean, I wasn't there. And I was like, literally, this isn't a joke. I was trying to think through, can I find out who that dude was?
Where'd he go?
Is there like a manifest somewhere with his name on it? Do I know anybody in the FFA? Or at Denver? Not FFA. That's Future Farmers of America. FAA.
FAA. That's right.
I probably do know someone in FFA.
Yeah.
But, I was like fantasizing about finding this dude and killing him.
Yeah.
Like, I would choke the life out of that guy if I could find him.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's not as if it's not hard enough when you're a parent and your children are acting up, but to then have somebody kind of pile on in the moment is even worse. So that feeds that narrative of like, man, I must be a bad parent. I must be, I must be doing something wrong. I'm not doing the potty training thing right because this person over here says it works if I just lock myself in the house for 3 days.
Not true. I tried it. It's not true.
Sleeping, potty training,
That's right.
pacifiers.
That's right.
Sometimes nothing works.
Yeah, you're right. That's right.
It's just the way it is.
Or it's these parents who we've been in. You made me think about Disney. We were on these Disney buses, and like this parent was correcting their kid like really loud, like Jimmy. You know that we don't do that. We don't hit.
It's one of my favorites.
We know. We learn how to use our words.
We use our words.
And it's
That's
you don't have to tell all of us that you're an awesome parent.
Yeah.
I mean. Yeah. Just whisper in his ear.
To be real honest with you, my favorite is when that's just not working.
Yeah.
They just keep saying it.
Yeah.
we need to use our words.
Yeah.
Like, I think you've said it 5 times. I don't think he cares. I think he's going to keep doing what he's
definitely
doing.
don't. Yeah. Yeah. It's like,
Like, we get it. You read a parenting book once.
Yep.
yeah,
We
that's
get
great.
it.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's great.
Let me land this plane. Back to more tattoos. This is a very tattooed panel we've got here.
Yeah, how about that?
It is indeed.
Yeah.
How about
so
that?
Psalm 127 is something that I've got tattooed on my shoulder, beginning at verse 3. I don't have all of it tattooed on my shoulder, but I have a symbol of it. Behold, children are a heritage from
I have
the
Psalm
Lord.
150. It's really long. Or 119.
You got all
the way
like
down my
Oh my gosh.
165 verses.
Man, you were getting ready. I'm sorry. I jumped
You
into the wrong
interrupted.
Sorry.
If you're at my dinner
Scripture
table,
reading. Come on.
That's exactly like it
that's
is.
exactly right.
Start
Now, if you-
over, man.
If you would
Sorry.
just burp while you're at it.
That's right. That's right.
Behold, children are a heritage from the Lord. The fruit of the womb is reward, like arrows in the hand of a warrior. The children of one's youth. Blessed is the man who fills his quiver with them. He shall not be put to shame when he speaks with his enemies in the gate. And there's a lot that could be unpacked there. I've preached whole sermons on it, but the most vivid picture is an arrow is meant to be drawn back, aimed, and released.
That's right.
And let go. And so we're aiming at Jesus. We want our kids to know and love and follow Jesus. So we're trying to show them Jesus, imperfectly as it may be, as often as we can. And then there's a time coming where we got to let them go. And wind may come. There's all kinds of different things that can happen.
Yeah.
But that's all we can do, and that's scary. But again, it goes back to who we are and what we can do.
Who they ultimately belong to.
And who they belong to. Well, thank you all. Thanks for joining us on the cleverly named Parenting Podcast, Southland's Parenting Podcast, where we try to impress upon parents what must be impressed upon kids because you can't give what you don't have.
What
Catch you
a
next
tagline.
time.